So who reads in Megillat Ruth? I mean, I know in the shul in my building, they stay up all night. And the first thing they do, because they can do this before sunrise, is read Ruth. One of my son-in-laws says that that's a signal to go to sleep until the end. Um, one of the reasons I don't stay up all night. So it's a serious work that requires a lot of um, reading. We're not used to that. One of the most beautiful things in Megillat Ruth is Nomi greets Ruth upon her return from the Goren, from the threshing floor. And she says to her, "Blessed is the one who recognized you." The sages of the Talmud say that, there are no mitzvot in Ruth. It's like, why are we reading it? My son-in-law asks. And their answer is because of its emphasis on gimel chasadim, on doing good deeds. It's really kindness. That's how it's translated. Um, Blessed is the one who recognizes you. Um, when we first get to Yehuda back from Moab, Nomi goes from Eretz Yisrael to Moab and back. It's kind of like a return story. But in her story, she comes back and she says, "My name is Mar. My name is bitterness." Lots of things about names in this book as well. Um, Now, Ruth's story is different. It's a different return story. She goes from Naomi's house to the threshing floor and back to Naomi's house. Now, in the story in Yehuda in Beit Lechem, um, it's not a good place for women to be. 3 or 4 times, Boaz warns Ruth not to stray from his field and not to stray from his women, and to make sure that he asks his overseer to watch out for her. And then Boaz assures her that she can eat and drink with the rest of his workers. He's telling her then, "You're safe." And also think about Ruth. Ruth is a Moabite. In the book of Numbers, it's the Moabite women who seduce the men of Israel. It's this, some of the sages say it's like a second Yitzias Mitzrayim, because it's the temptation of the women of Moab is so determined and intense. So just Ruth comes, she's a Moabite, she's an outsider, she's a woman, and she would also have been considered, or as a Moabite, I don't know, whatever, a Moabite woman, a woman who did not have a good reputation in among the men of Israel. So it's like, oh great, Moabite woman's here. We can do whatever we want. Once they go down to the threshing floor, that's where things almost turn upside down. Ruth uncovers Boaz, and of course, Boaz, the aristocratic Jew, finds himself caring for and recognizing, seeing Ruth. That's what Naomi says. Blessed are you. Blessed is the one who recognizes you. And that recognition seen between the feminine and the masculine, between Boaz and Ruth. When they come back, Boaz says, "Chill for a while. I'm going to take care of this." And the first thing he does, he goes to the Sanhedrin and he clarifies, as the Medrash says, the law, when it's then the Torah says that a Moabite can't be included in the people of Israel. It meant Moabite men and not Moabite women. And Boaz clarifies that. He's the head of the Sanhedrin. And once he clarifies the law, well, then the story shifts again. And Boaz vanishes from the story, like in the trilogy by Aeschylus, the Oresteia, which everybody has to read. At the end of the 3 plays, Apollo, who's been the prime mover in the whole thing, he vanishes. And the only people left on stage are the women of Athens. It's a very cool ending. The only people left on stage in Ruth are the women of Beit Lechem. They name the baby as Oved. They name the baby. They congratulate Ruth that her blessing has been Nomi, that all of everything that she had wanted has been fulfilled. She has been, I mean, in a way, Ruth vanishes as well. Um, in the Torah, there's the Kri and the Ketiv, what you read and what's written. And sometimes what's written, they say it's scribal errors or whatever, but sometimes what's written is a separate story. Interestingly, there are, not that I'm an expert, but in chapter 3 of Ruth, that is the threshing floor, there are a bunch of these things. And at least two of them, there's the difference between the Kri and the Ketiv. The Kri is what we read. The Ketiv is what's written there. It's kind of like a subtext in a way. And twice, once it says, she says to Ruth, she's giving her instructions, and Nomi is praised by the men of the city, and she should be like Rachel and Leah. But Nomi's also kind of a Rivka character or Rebecca character, but she's always organizing things. Um, so she tells Ruth, you're going to go down into the Goren, you're going to go down into it. And I think it's Yoradet in the feminine second person, but the Ketiv is first person singular, and I will go down, and I will go down. It's almost as if Nomi goes down into the Goren with Ruth, and that's why in the end, it's her child. Now, when she goes down to the Goren, also when Ruth comes back, when Ruth returns from the threshing floor, the first thing Nomi asks her is, "Who are you?" Readers of Hamlet, of course, will know that's the first line of Hamlet, kind of, who's there? Who are you? And that's an essential question of the work. Who are you, and what's the relationship between who you are and what your name is? And I think part of the reason Nomi asks, who are you, is going along with the Ketiv, that she was there also in a way. And the simple drush, the pshat is, the sages say, are you married or you're not married? But the drush is, and it's clear, this text is moving in this direction. What happened to you there? How are you transformed? And the threshing floor serves for Ruth in Ruth, as this place of transformation, this place of kindness, this place of recognition. And afterwards, the feminine takes over. You have to think about this, right? That we enter into a world of toxic masculinity. Most great works, it seems, are like about this. Everybody says, "Oh, the Jewish tradition, the Western tradition is so sexist." Yeah, it's sexist. I mean, men never come off well, ever, ever, ever. And the feminine, once there is this mutual recognition between Boaz, the aristocrat, the older man, the insider, and Ruth, the ultimate outsider. I mean, talking about the Greeks, she's like Medea. She's this foreign figure who just comes in. She has none of the power of Medea. She represents vulnerability. And that's the kindness. The kindness is being able to see somebody's vulnerability and not manipulate it. That's the difference between a tzaddik and a rasha. A tzaddik is somebody who sees the vulnerability of somebody else and tries to build them up, sees it, respects it, understands it, allows it, and then empowers it. The rasha is somebody who sees vulnerability and is a predator and takes advantage. And the difference between before the threshing floor and after the threshing floor is that we have transformed from a culture of masculine toxic predation to this feminine culture where people come together. We name the child together. And of course, and this is the extraordinarily crazy thing about this text, is Ruth comes from the Moabite, she's a Moabite. She's the product of an incestuous marriage, or an incestuous coupling. She's one of Lot's, or the descendant of Lot's daughters, who Lot impregnated. The end of Ruth also mentions Judah and Tamar, another bizarre relationship where Judah ends up marrying the daughter-in-law that he had called a prostitute and a whore. And the end of the work says, yeah, well, Ruth starts the line, and Boaz comes in just to really hit for his seed, basically. Ruth starts the line that ends in the Messiah. And this is our tradition is one that we don't we don't run away from the repressed. There's a book by Harold Bloom called The Return of the Repressed, and we push everything away and then eventually it comes back. Of course, we all do this. But the tradition shows itself. Where do we come from? From humanity. And this is the source of this is the beginning of the messianic reign or realm or whatever, kingship that begins with David. And David's kingship is a kingship of humanity. And Ruth's role is to bring this human kindness and human vulnerability into our tradition. And that vulnerability, we must cultivate it, because that's where the truth lies. The truth always lies in the vulnerability. It doesn't lie only in the official story. When we think the truth lies only in the official story, then we have problems. And that's why writing and creativity are so important to us today, because we get beyond the official story. And that official, and what happens is, once we know the subtext, once we know about Ruth, is not that the official story goes away. It becomes stronger. It becomes more real. It becomes more human.